Every story has a beginning, before the mystery, before the headlines. Elisa Lam was just a girl with a dream. A dream to escape, to explore, to feel something new. Born in Vancouver, Canada, to parents who had built a life from the ground up, she grew up in a home filled with love, tradition, and quiet expectations. Her family ran a restaurant, working long hours to give her and her sister a future. Elisa, she was the quiet one, the dreamer. She studied at the University of British Columbia but wasn't sure where life was taking her. She smiled often, but not every smile was real. On the outside, she seemed fine, happy even, but inside, it was more complicated. She poured her thoughts into a Tumblr blog. Fashion, photography, fleeting moments of inspiration. But between the posts were something else. Whispers of loneliness, glimpses of something heavier. Still, she had dreams. Big ones. She wanted to see the world, to escape the routine if only for a little while. And in January 2013, she did. Elisa had always wanted to travel. She wasn't reckless or impulsive, but she had this quiet longing to escape the gray skies of Vancouver, to step into the unknown. She read books about distant places, followed travelers online, dreamed of moving through cities where no one knew her name. But dreaming was one thing, doing it was another. Then something changed. Maybe she felt stuck. Maybe she just needed to breathe. Either way, in early 2013, she made a decision. She was going to California, alone. It wasn't a bold, dramatic escape. No big announcements, just a single ticket, a packed bag, and a plan. A new city, a new adventure, something different. On January 26th, Elisa boarded an Amtrak train. And just like that, she was gone. For the first time, Elisa was alone, truly alone. No parents, no friends, just miles of track ahead. For most, it was a dream. For Elisa, maybe it was something more. Los Angeles, a city of stars, a city of stories. For Elisa, it was a fresh start, a place to explore, to be free. But LA isn't just a dream, it's something else too, something you can feel in the air. Elisa Lam checks into the Cecil Hotel on January 26, 2013. She arrives alone, suitcase in hand, stepping into the lobby. She fills out the check-in form, signs her name, and takes the room key. She's assigned to a shared room on the 5th floor. For the first couple of days, everything seems fine. But soon, things start to change. After a few days, her roommates complain about Elisa's behavior. They describe her as acting strangely, disoriented, perhaps even a little agitated. The hotel responds by moving her to a private room, still on the same floor. By February 1st, her parents haven't heard from her in several days, which is unusual for Elisa. They start to worry. It's out of character for her to go silent. especially since they'd been in regular contact while she traveled. They reach out to the hotel, asking for information. The hotel confirms Elisa is still there, but there's no word from her. Her parents don't get any answers. And on February 2nd, they call the LAPD to report her missing. The police respond quickly. They head to the Cecil Hotel and speak to hotel staff. Elisa hasn't checked out. Her belongings are still in her room, but there's no sign of her. Officers start asking questions. When was the last time anyone saw her? The front desk remembers her checking in. Housekeeping confirms they cleaned her room. But beyond that, nothing stands out. No reports of a disturbance. No signs of a struggle. No evidence that she ever left. Over the next few days, LAPD searches the hotel. They bring in K9 units trained to pick up human scent. The dogs sniff through the hallways, stairwells, common areas. They check her room. Nothing. They even take the dogs to the rooftop. The handlers lead them toward the water tanks, but still nothing. Elisa's parents arrive in Los Angeles. They push the police for answers, but there are none. Flyers go up around the city. Downtown LA is full of her face. And then a strange detail. Her Tumblr is still updating. Posts keep appearing. New images, new text. Is Elisa posting from somewhere? Is she still out there? Or are these just scheduled posts, automatically appearing long after she went silent? February 13th. 2 weeks after Elisa was last seen, LAPD releases one final piece of evidence: security footage, the last known recording of Elisa Lam. We'll show a short portion of the raw footage first, then analyze it step by step. The doors open, and Elisa walks in. She looks at the control panel, pressing multiple buttons, then moves to the corner. She seems to be waiting for the doors to close, but appears relaxed. She glances outside, first to the right, then to the left. Then she turns back, stands next to the wall, then tucks away into another corner next to the control panel. She looks outside again, as if expecting someone to approach. She keeps looking to the right, as if something is happening there. Then she steps out, and suddenly, she takes a small jump forward. Her steps are strange. She walks backward inside again, then steps out once more, as if playing a child's game. Then she moves to the left. We can only see a little bit of her arm and shorts while she stands there. The doors still open, suddenly, she steps back inside. Holding onto the walls as if she has difficulty keeping balance, she starts pressing buttons again. It looks like she's pressing all of them. Then she steps back out immediately. She stands in front again. On the left side, she starts moving her hands in a strange way, as if something is controlling her. Her arms appear to bend, wave, perhaps due to the low-quality footage, but the movements seem unnatural. She waves her hands, as if acting something out, or maybe talking to someone unseen. Then it looks like she's twisting her fingers, or counting. Her behavior is so unusual. Then she moves out of view to the left, and never returns. The doors remain open. Until suddenly, they close on their own, and the elevator moves to another floor. One possible explanation for why the doors didn't close is that she may have pressed the hold button. This button can keep them open for up to 2 minutes. If she pressed it, whether intentionally or not, that could explain why it seemed stuck. Still, her behavior remains strange and raises many questions. This was the last time Elisa Lam was seen alive. As days passed after Elisa's disappearance, guests at the Cecil Hotel began noticing something unusual. Many reported low water pressure, while others described the tap water as having a dark color and a strange taste. Some guests even drank and bathed in the water, without knowing where it was coming from. It wasn't until February 19, 2013, nearly 3 weeks after Elisa was last seen, that a maintenance worker was sent to check the hotel's rooftop water tanks. When maintenance worker Santiago Lopez climbed up to inspect the tanks, he made a horrifying discovery. Inside one of the large 1,000-gallon tanks, floating face up, was the body of Elisa Lam. Authorities were called immediately, and the rooftop was sealed off as homicide detectives arrived. At this point, the biggest question was, how did she get there? The water tanks were located in a restricted area on the hotel's rooftop. There were only a few ways to access the rooftop: a fire escape, which was difficult to climb, a locked rooftop door with an active alarm system, meaning if she had gone through it, hotel staff would have been alerted, a staff-only staircase that required a passcode or key. Even more disturbing, the water tank itself was covered by a heavy metal lid. Hotel staff originally stated that the lid was closed when they found Elisa, but later reports contradicted this. If the lid had been shut, how could Elisa have closed it from the inside? This detail led to intense speculation. Was it an accident, a suicide, or something more sinister? A full autopsy and toxicology report was conducted on Elisa's body, but the findings only deepened the mystery. Key findings: no signs of trauma or physical injuries were found. No drugs or alcohol, beyond prescribed medication, were detected in her system. Her body had begun decomposing, making some conclusions difficult. However, one crucial detail stood out: her medication levels were lower than expected. This raised the possibility that Elisa had not been taking her medication consistently. which could have led to a psychotic episode. Was this enough to explain how she ended up in the water tank? Or was someone else involved? The Cecil Hotel, opened its doors in 1924, was once a grand symbol of luxury in downtown Los Angeles. Located in the heart of a thriving district, it catered to tourists, business travelers, and locals, and was regarded as one of the finest hotels of its time. But, as history would reveal, the hotel's fortunes would shift dramatically over the years. The hotel's decline began just 5 years after its grand opening. The Wall Street crash of 1929 and the Great Depression left downtown LA in ruins.
Los Angeles, the city of dreams, now faces hard times. Businesses shutter, unemployment soars, and bread lines stretch for blocks. Once bustling streets now sit in eerie silence as the economic crisis grips the nation. In downtown, hotels and shops fight to survive, their halls no longer filled with travelers. With no relief in sight, the people ask, when will prosperity return?
And the Cecil's once thriving business model began to crumble. The city was changing, and so too was the fate of the Cecil Hotel. As the city's heart began to erode, so did the hotel's status. The opening of Union Station in 1939 drew the city's transport north, leaving the hotel isolated. By 1950, the loss of key industries in the area compounded the problem, pushing the Cecil further into decline. The Cecil became a refuge for the city's most vulnerable. Cheap rent and its central location drew those living on the fringes of society. The hotel, once a haven for business travelers, was now home to long-term, low-income tenants. But as the years went on, the hotel's reputation began to take on a darker hue. Tragic incidents, unexplained deaths, and strange disappearances became a troubling pattern within the Cecil's walls. The first recorded tragedy occurred in 1927, when Percy Ormond Cook, 52, took his own life after a personal crisis. He left behind a letter explaining his decision, which he attributed to his separation from his wife and family. Then, in 1931, W.K. Norton was found deceased in his room, having ingested poison. Norton had checked into the hotel under a false name, further adding to the mystery surrounding his passing. Another shocking case came in 1932, when Benjamin Doddick, just 25, was found dead from a self-inflicted wound. And it didn't stop there. Grace Magro, 1937, Roy Thompson, 1938, then Erwin Neblett in 1939, Helen Gurney, Julia Moore, Pauline Otten, and many more, all meeting the same fate. Some fell from the building. Some consumed harmful substances. Others were found under circumstances too strange to explain. In 1947, Elizabeth Short, later known as the Black Dahlia, was last seen at the bar inside the Cecil Hotel. Days later, her lifeless body was found in an empty lot, in a condition so disturbing that it shocked the entire city. Her case remains one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries in American history. Did she meet someone at the Cecil? Did she leave with a stranger that night, never knowing she wouldn't make it home? Another name added to the dark history of the hotel, and she wouldn't be the last. By the 1960s, the Cecil had become something else entirely. No longer a hotel for travelers, but a place surrounded by mystery and darkness. One of the most unsettling cases came in 1944, when a young woman named Dorothy Jean Purcell unexpectedly gave birth alone in her hotel room, unaware of her pregnancy. In a state of panic, she made a decision that led to devastating consequences. She was later found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity. But the Cecil wasn't just a place where people lost their lives. It was also a place where dangerous figures lived. Richard Ramirez, the man later known as the Night Stalker, stayed here in 1985, a man who left a mark on Los Angeles, wandering the streets late at night, committing unthinkable acts. Ramirez would return to the Cecil after his nights out, sometimes discarding his clothes in the alley behind the hotel, before walking through the lobby, unnoticed. And he wasn't the only one. In 1991, Jack Unterweger, an Austrian writer and journalist, checked in while covering LA crime, but he wasn't just reporting on violence. He was living a double life. Authorities later connected him to multiple crimes during his stay. All while blending in as a regular guest, the Cecil had gone from a grand hotel to something else entirely. A place tied to the darkest stories in modern history, and the mysteries weren't over yet. Considering the dark history of the Cecil Hotel, it makes Elisa's case even more perplexing. On January 31st, 2013, Elisa Lam visited the Last Bookstore in downtown Los Angeles, a well-known independent bookstore. During her visit, she engaged in a conversation with the store manager, Katie Orphan. Elisa mentioned that she was purchasing books likely for herself or as gifts for her family in Canada. Katie described Elisa as being in good spirits during their interaction. Elisa purchased several books during her visit. While the specific titles have not been publicly disclosed, it's known that she was a fan of literature, including works like The Great Gatsby and Harry Potter. This suggests that the books she selected were in line with her personal interests. Her excitement about these books and her intention to bring them back to her family paints a picture of a young woman who was looking forward to going home. It was a stark contrast to what would happen just days later, making her sudden disappearance and death all the more troubling. Elisa did not seem like someone who intended to lose her life in Los Angeles. Elisa had also visited other notable locations in the city, including the Los Angeles Zoo. Witnesses who interacted with her during these visits described her as friendly and engaged, reinforcing the image of a young woman enjoying her travels and making the most of her time in the city. Later that day, she made her way back to the Cecil Hotel. Her last known communication was through a series of phone calls and text messages, including one to her parents. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, at least not at first. There are many theories surrounding her death, with some suggesting foul play. One possibility is that Elisa was the victim of a crime, possibly at the hands of someone who knew how to manipulate the situation to avoid detection. Could she have been murdered? When considering this, we have to take a closer look at Elisa's background. She had been open about her struggles with mental health, particularly bipolar disorder, a condition that can often lead to unpredictable behavior. But despite her history of mental health challenges, it seems hard to believe that someone who had just visited a bookstore, purchasing books to bring back to her family, would suddenly take her own life. There's a disconnect between what we know about her final days and the tragic events that unfolded. Drug abuse is another possibility that's been raised, especially considering the location and circumstances of her death. The area surrounding the Cecil Hotel has long been known for a high rate of crime, addiction, and homelessness. Many residents of the hotel were battling substance abuse, and it was common for people to be drawn to that environment. But there's no concrete evidence to suggest that Elisa was involved in drugs in a way that would explain her death. So, could someone have targeted her? Many have questioned the possibility of a murder in this case. If it were a murder, the question remains, how did the perpetrator gain access to the rooftop where Elisa's body was discovered? The hotel was a labyrinth of locked doors, and only the staff had access to the keys that led to the roof. Could it have been an insider, someone with access to the building's restricted areas? Theories point to the potential involvement of hotel staff who could have played a role in accessing the rooftop. But no solid evidence has ever surfaced to suggest any staff members were involved, and the hotel's management has always maintained that there's no direct link. Still, this doesn't stop the possibility from lingering. Could Elisa's death have been orchestrated by someone close to the hotel, someone who knew the ins and outs of its operations? After years of investigations, no one has ever been charged, and the mystery of Elisa Lam's death continues to haunt us. Elisa Lam's tragic death at the Cecil Hotel has intrigued people worldwide, with countless theories and investigations attempting to unravel the mystery of how she ended up in the hotel's rooftop water tank. But some have drawn eerie comparisons between her death and the 1996 short story, The Floating Water by Koji Suzuki, which was later adapted into the 2002 film Dark Water. In the film Dark Water, a young mother and her daughter move into a dilapidated apartment building. The central plot revolves around the strange occurrences tied to the apartment's water system, where leaks appear throughout the building and water becomes a harbinger of terror. The film culminates in the discovery of a young girl's body in a water tank, an image eerily similar to Elisa Lam's case. The parallels are unsettling. In both the story and film, water tanks are central to the mystery. In Dark Water, the body of a deceased girl is found in a water tank, and this leads to the unraveling of the haunting secrets within the building. The characters in the film are tormented by these water-related events, much like the discomfort experienced by the guests of the Cecil Hotel after Elisa Lam's body was found in the hotel's water tank. The hotel guests had complained of strange tasting and discolored water, which turned out to have been contaminated by Elisa's body. Like the characters in Dark Water, Elisa's behavior before her death raised many questions. Surveillance footage from the hotel's elevator showed Elisa acting erratically, pressing buttons and moving in ways that suggested she was either under duress or interacting with an unseen presence. Her strange behavior, coupled with the discovery of her body in the water tank, echoes the supernatural elements seen in the film. In Dark Water, water symbolizes more than just a physical element. It represents a connection to the past, to trauma, and to things left unresolved. The body in the water tank in the film is connected to the tragic past of a child who died under mysterious circumstances. Similarly, Elisa Lam's death has been linked to the dark history of the Cecil Hotel, which has a reputation for its ties to violence, crime, and even other infamous deaths. Was Elisa's death an isolated tragedy, or is there something more sinister at play, much like the forces at work in Dark Water? Could it be that the eerie similarities between Elisa's case and the film's plot are not just coincidental? It's impossible to say for certain, and like the unresolved mysteries in Dark Water, Elisa's case may never be fully explained.
Midnight shadows on the street light glow, secret whispers where no one goes, mystic wonder as the stars